welcome to another episode of Timeout with Derek and Joe. For Joe Azalina, I'm Derek Gano. Thank you for taking time out of your day to spend some time with us. So, Joe and I have been talking about how we want to keep our show fresh, keep it interesting. So, one idea we came up with was we were going to start up some interviews. And our first interviewee, for a lot of you who listen to this show, may not need any introduction, but I'm going to try my best. So, a 3-year varsity starter at Notre Dame Green Pond in Bethlehem, all East Penn League selection as a senior, 4-year starter at LaSalle University, first team All East Coast Conference selection in 1976, second team in 1977, player manager for 22 years in the Blue Mountain League, 12 years coaching Easton Senior Legion, ND High School Baseball Hall of Fame, Northampton County Legion Hall of Fame, Blue Mountain League Hall of Fame, PA Sports Hall of Fame in 2011, and entering his 14th season as pitching coach at Lehigh University, my uncle John Bisco. Thank you very much for coming on with us.
Thanks for having me, guys. Happy holidays to everybody. And this should be a lot of fun. Joe, how are you doing, buddy?
Doing great. It's baseball. We're talking baseball. This is going to be awesome.
Good.
So without further ado, I guess we'll get started. So you have been a mentor for so many athletes in your life, including myself. Who was a mentor for you growing up, would you say, and who's inspired you the most throughout your life?
Well, great question. Your grandfather, I was lucky to have for 14 years. And what a lot of people don't realize is that he was a tremendous athlete at Easton High back in the day, and he was quite a pitcher. So really, all the basics, one of my biggest mentor was my father. I was lucky enough I had him long enough that he showed me a lot of how to throw and just the game itself and the demeanor you should have and so forth. So didn't have him long enough, but definitely my biggest mentor. Then in high school in Notre Dame, the program now has gone leaps and bounds. When I was in high school, we were in East Penn League with Easton and Phillipsburg and Reading and Liberty and Freedom and all big schools. There was no Colonial League. There was after East Penn League, Notre Dame went to what they call the Centennial League. So we had Coach Cromer, and he was a mentor, but then he left to go to take the job at Central. So I had John Reichel, and John Reichel wasn't a baseball guy, but what he was a development man guy. He was just a good man. And he brought in a gentleman by the name of John Squasha. And Joe, you might know Mr. Squasha. Mr. Squasha was a Lafayette grad, played second base for Lafayette, knew the game real well, Easton High grad. And he was the principal of Southern Lehigh High School. And I think at Penn Argyll, if I'm not mistaken, at one point. But he came on as an assistant back in the 70s, and he knew the game. So he was a tremendous mentor. And then my two biggest guys were Chick Kennedy. I was lucky enough to play for Chick in Legion. And he had two tremendous assistants. Carm LaDuca, who's at Easton High School, his father was Chick's assistant. And he was just absolutely phenomenal. They worked so hard with us, and we had a really nice team. But Thad Turner, believe it or not, who's in every wrestling hall of fame, used to help Chick with the Legion team. So we had Thad Turner, who was a prominent Division I wrestling coach, who was also my Legion coach. So they were my mentors coming up through Notre Dame.
That's very interesting that you're and we actually talk about one a little later, how it's almost like they weren't specific baseball coaches. You know, some of the guys who you came up with were just brought in as, like you said, maybe developmental guys and leaders, but they came from other programs or got shipped out to other programs. It's very interesting that they just kind of moved from place to place.
Well, you know what? Back then, and probably through the late 90s, you played more than one sport. And in Notre Dame, gee whiz, you know, you played 2 or 3 sports. So that's just the way it was. So all these guys actually coach different sports. They just naturally, like it is now, you know, they specialized in one sport. And then, you know, Coach Turner, he was, you know, he's a legend. So.
Well, at Notre Dame, you were a first-team All-East Penn League selection with a very, very low 2 ERA as a pitcher, but you're also, we thought, played at shortstop. Now, that's one part. And then the other part is, did you have any high school coaches who particularly helped you with your development on the pitching side?
I'll tell you what, Joe, the ironic thing is number one, I was first team All-East Penn League as a shortstop. I was not a first team All-East Penn League pitcher. There were 2 guys, Kurt Storms from Easton and Dan Oshesky from Freedom. My claim that year was Freedom was 18-2 and they lost 2 games all year, and believe it or not, I beat them both times. But you know, so had a really good year throwing wise, but I was actually first team All-East Penn shortstop. I know that's a lot. It's hard for a lot of people to believe, but that's a fact, you know. Mentor wise, I'll be honest with you. I mean, I was really lucky because I grew up with, in a pretty tough neighborhood, and a lot of my mentors who really showed me how to pitch, other than my father, were, you know, little league coaches and things like that. You know, at Notre Dame, Coach Reichel didn't have a baseball background. Chick, now on the other hand, Chick Kennedy, you know, was there for 30 years. But I played for 2 men. I mean, 2 guys who just, they'd stay there 15 hours a day to work with you. They, you know, and I was lucky with that. So, but there really wasn't one person that I could say just took me by the arm and said, here it is, you know. I was sort of fortunate in that respect. There were a lot of people.
Did Chick Kennedy, didn't he coach at Palisades at one time too?
Yeah, well, he did. He was coach of the year his last year. He'll knock me out if I don't remember a year that he retired. I think it was 2005. He was coach of the year, but you know, he took a program that they were winning 1 and 2 games a year,
right?
And they won districts every year. And then he actually asked me to be his pitching coach there, but at the time I was taking this business that I'm into the next level, and it was too much, and I just didn't think I could do it 50%. So I gave it up, but that would have been a fun ride, you know.
Great coach, definitely great coach.
I will ask, was high school, when obviously you didn't have to hit too much in college, I would think, but was high school really the last time you were in lineups and such hitting, or did that go into college?
Yeah. I mean,
and did you miss that at all, hitting?
Yeah, I mean, you always do, you know.
Yeah.
The DH came in 73. So that's when it all started, and I graduated from Notre Dame in 73. But yeah, I mean, I think I hit 375 or 376, something like that, in high school. You know, and then, you know, you go to college. The one thing about college is especially Division I, you're specialized. You know, we have a kid right now that's a tremendous left-handed pitcher who was all Catholic League in Philadelphia, who could play for a lot of 2 and 3 schools, Division 2 and 3 schools right now. I think he hit like 12 home runs in his career, and we don't even let him take batting practice. So yeah, it's just the way it is.
Yeah, there's very few of them you see anymore that make it in both in college. Um, which brings us, we're gonna move on to your college years here. And this I was actually very unaware of. That you actually signed a letter of intent to play at St. Joe's in Philadelphia. But I do hear that there is a funny story about how you ended up playing at LaSalle. Do you want to let us
Sure,
in on that?
sure. Well, it's, again, it's not like it is today. Today, you sign letters. Well, you don't sign letters, but you give content. You give a
Hmm.
intent to go to a school when you're a sophomore or a junior. Back then, you didn't do anything until you were a senior. So in March of my senior year, I was offered a scholarship from St. Joe with the coach from St. Joe, Tom Boylan. He was, at that time, a lot of guys also coached basketball, or they coached another sport to subsidize income. Well, he was the assistant coach for Jack McKinney, who was a well-renowned basketball coach at St. Joe. They were doing really, really well. And they had a heck of a year. Well, for some reason, he was an assistant with Jack. At the end of the season, Jack somehow got let go by St. Joe's University, and Boylan got the job. So the guy who offered me the money was no longer the coach. So they didn't have a coach. And at that time, you weren't under contract to go to that school. So your grandmother, she wasn't going to let me go to a school where the guy wasn't even there. So the bottom line was that was out. They didn't have a coach, and I was concerned. So in the meantime, two of the schools that were after me were Temple and legendary Skippy Wilson. He has 1,100 wins. He's in the top 10 of all time. He was recruiting me, and Gene McDonald was recruiting me from LaSalle. And I chose to go to LaSalle because Gene drove up here and to see me throw, and I happened to throw a no-hitter that night in Legion. And he wasn't allowed to talk to me, and he drove all the way back to Philly, and then he called me at like 9:30 at night. And, your mother and my mother, we drove down to see the school, and Nan liked it, Derek. That was it. It was over,
Yeah.
Nan, it's funny. My mother liked that they took me to the library, to the business department, to the education department, and everything. The last thing I did was see the baseball field and the gym.
Oh my God.
And that's the truth. So she said, this is where you're going to school. So that was it, But
and it's pretty crazy. I don't know. I didn't go to that school, but I kind of know it pretty well.
yeah.
For those
So,
that don't know, my Uncle John, my cousin Matt, my sister, my mom all went to LaSalle University. So it was kind of paved the way for lots of explorer students there. I will say, so at LaSalle, you went 25 in your 4 years, including your team had winning records all 4 years and had 2 NCAA tournament appearances. Of course, I'd have to, even getting that Temple University look, I would have to imagine you wouldn't have traded your experience at LaSalle for anything. But tell us about any specific experiences at LaSalle you want to talk about, and what the school and the baseball program means to you. Obviously, the program has been in the news over the past few months.
well, it's, and we could talk about that a little later.
Right.
It's really, it was going to give me the opportunity. Temple at the time, and a lot of people don't realize this, but because Temple's programs disband also, which is criminal. And I think they have 20 players who went on and played in the major leagues, not got drafted, but played in the major leagues. And the program's defunct. I was going to go there, but I probably wouldn't have thrown there regardless until my junior year. And the reason for that is because they were so darn good every year. LaSalle was rebuilding. I went in and literally was recruited with 17 other freshmen. So I knew that I would get an opportunity, not necessarily, that I was going to play, but that I was going to get an opportunity. Well, I was lucky because we just got progressively better. Our senior class my freshman year was just outstanding. They were leaders. I couldn't say enough about them. Sort of like my sophomore class at Notre Dame with Bobby Gratzes and the Joey Panos of the world. They were just leaders. So we went 17-10. And my sophomore year, we were better. We went 19-10. We didn't play the games that we play today. As I'm coaching at Lehigh, we play 50, 55 games a year. Yeah, it wasn't like that then. And then junior year, we were 24-12, and then we were 26-14 my senior year. We just got better and better. And then our pitching staff, 3 of us had an opportunity for either pro tryouts or getting drafted or so forth my senior year off of that class. And one guy made it to the major leagues, Tommy Filer. So, I can't bring one specific thing. The only thing I can tell you is one thing is that I'm very proud of is I pitched the first no-hitter in 42 years in history there. And that was against Hofstra, and that was a big deal.
So the 2 NCAA tournament appearances, I didn't dive that deep into it, but did you have to go to some larger schools to play on their fields, or how it is nowadays? Or
again, it was different because it was so regionalized. So what they did was, if you won the conference, you went directly to the NCAA tournament, and then they would put you somewhere, but you would stay regional. So Temple won the conference. They beat us in a championship that year, and they went to St. John's for the regional. All right, what we would do then is the second place team would go to what they call the ECAC tournament, and then you would play in the ACAC tournament. And to get into the NCAA, you had to win that tournament. And it was like, it was like regionals now, and then they have super regionals, and then from super regionals, then you go to the College World Series. It wasn't like that. Then it was the ECAC, if you didn't win, and go directly to the NCAA, and then the NCAA, and then the College World Series. So there was, it was like a pre-NIT, if you will. And fortunately, we were lucky. We went to the tournament. But to answer your question, then they sent us to Miami. So, and at that time, Miami they were in the top 5 every year. So we went to Miami. We literally won the first game because we weren't the last seed. We won the first game, and then we lost to Miami the second game. And then the third game, we were eliminated because it was double elimination. But it was nice,
Sounds like a great experience. That's
sure. It was fantastic.
Well, you were a member of the Notre Dame High School Hall of Fame, the Northampton County Legion Hall of Fame, the Blue Mountain League Hall of Fame, and the PA Pennsylvania Sports Hall of Fame. I'm sure it's not about the awards, but is there one acknowledgement that stands out to you above the rest? And what would you say is the best moment of your career?
Well, that's a big question, Joseph. They're all special. They really, really are. Legion back then, there were no AAU teams. There were no travel teams. Nothing was watered down. The best players played Legion baseball. So I was fortunate enough. I played with a lot of great players and was fortunate enough to be on some really good all-star teams. Blue Mountain League, same thing. See, today there's like 50 to 60 collegiate leagues. Back then, there weren't collegiate league. There was the Cape Cod League, there was the Alaskan League, the California League, and the North Carolina League. That was it. Florida didn't even have a collegiate league back then. So in the Blue Mountain League, you played with guys who either played pro ball and got released and came back and still wanted to play, or guys that were pretty darn good players. And so, I was fortunate. I was around a lot of great players in that regard. But as far as accomplishment or anything like that, I don't know. I mean, it's really tough to say. I think probably the biggest accolade that I can talk about really is just I was fortunate enough to play as long as I did, play with as many great players as I played, and it was just a great ride. It was a lot of fun, you know.
Now, as far as as far as I know, you said about playing. I know the question didn't really come out as saying about coaching, but I'm also wondering too. You've also coached with a lot of great coaches in your career. Does any of them stand out, or the fact that I mean you learn so much from others too, right?
Yeah, I mean, you know, again, you know, I was lucky. I had Chick Kennedy as a mentor, you know, Fred Turner as a mentor. There were a lot of coaches around me that were, you know, coached other teams, but I learned from because I played on all-star teams with them, you know, Jim Walbach from Easton and, you know, Ray Selasky from Freedom. These guys were just unbelievable, great coaches. And Mr. Smith from Wilson, they all spend time. When the fortunate thing is when you play on a tournament team or you play on an all-star team, you have the opportunity, just like you see in the big leagues, you get an opportunity of playing ball for guys who you're beating head against to try to beat them all year, you know? And so they were all tremendous mentors, but I was lucky. I mean, I had Chick, and, you know, I had him for 3 years, and I had him young, and I had him at a time when I really needed somebody to shake me up a little bit because I had lost my father at a young age. So, you know, did I answer your question? Sometimes I get crazy and
No, I totally get it. We always go off the nope, you're good. Absolutely.
We're used to that here. Yeah, absolutely. We're gonna move on to the next question here. So so you've coached, and we're gonna move on a little bit to coaching here now. You've coached, as you mentioned, for American Legion at Easton or the high school level. You've coached obviously the college level at Lehigh University here, and you've coached with pretty much all adults in the Blue Mountain League, with being successful at each. Can you just talk about how you had to adjust your coaching method in order to complement each of those ages and mindsets? Because obviously you would have to change up a little bit, I would think, right?
Yeah, no, definitely. Well, things have changed dramatically, you know, from when you played and my sons played, and when I played. I mean, that's a different lifetime. You know, half the things that, you know, we did back in the 70s, you go to jail for today. You know, it's, but no, I would say this. I mean, Legion, I think that the ironic thing is after playing as long as I did in the Blue Mountain League, when I was offered the Legion job, I didn't think I could do it because I didn't think I'd have the patience. I thought I would be too tough, and I didn't know if kids wanted to play hard enough to win and to just, you know, we're in Easton, let's be honest. I mean, there's a lot of tradition, and the program that I went into had unbelievable amount of tradition, and I just wasn't sure whether or not I had the patience enough. So the one thing that I realized is that I did have the patience enough. But what I think I was smart enough to do was I made sure I surrounded myself with quality assistants, and I had 4 quality assistants. You know, Barry Brote, you know, who passed 3 years ago. We grew up together, and was a baseball nut. And Joe, of course, you know Mr. Brote extremely well. He was with me every step of the way. I had Timmy Fisher, who has the all-time hits in the history of Blue Mountain League. He has like 1,100 hits. I brought him in. Rick McGann, who was my longtime catcher in Blue Mountain League and Senior League. And then Jim Happel, who was one of my best players that I ever coached in Legion. And he was with me forever. And Derek, you know, you played for 3 of these guys, you know, in your 3 years. So, but that was, you know, that was one thing with Legion. Blue Mountain League, you know, realistically, you're a manager of it's recruiting, and it's being able to know your guys and realize, who the best players are and who to put in the lineup. And, what Blue Mountain League does is it teaches you how to manage a game. And Blue Mountain League's a lot different today than it is, when I played, for that matter. But I was fortunate. I mean, we won 90 games in 3 years at one point, 80, 81, and 82. And then coaching college is just, it's special. It's tough. Coach Leary, I'm fortunate. I play for a Chick Disciple, or I coach for a Chick Disciple. He also, 16 years later, played for Chick Kennedy. So I'm his assistant, yet we come from the same make and we believe in the same things. And the one thing is that he brings quality kids in. And I'm just really, really proud of where we're coming. But where I am there, as far as temperament and everything, the difference is these guys that come and they're Division I players, they want to be there. Some of them are getting money, but a lot of them aren't getting money. And they have such an academic load. So they have to give 150%. If they don't, you don't study, you don't play, But I mean, that's the difference is that, patience for the younger guys and trying to get to a point where getting them to the point of winning. And I was fortunate because we had great young men like yourself and my two boys and so many others that still keep in contact with me. But then on the college end, it's, you're recruiting kids, but at the same time, they want to do this. They choose to do this. Nobody's putting a gun to their head saying, look, you have to do it. No, it's not the case,
Well, I'm representing my Easton Legion baseball here. I got my shirt. So
how about that? So that
I
was
will say
2005, 2006, that shirt?
Wow. Let me think. It would have been high school. So that would have been 2010 through 2013, something like that. It would have been.
Okay.
I was there.
Michael and Johnny played together in like 04, like 03.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, you're right.
Well, it was a very fun experience, I will say, for myself, because it was completely new guys. Like, I playing at Notre Dame, they were mostly all in the Freemansburg area and whatnot. So it was very cool to create those relationships where you're playing against those guys sometimes. And and then I will never forget when the Easton or the American Legion tournament came to Hackett's Park,
right.
And I was one of the ball boys there, and I got to know so many of those teams and a lot of great guys. And so
we were just talking about somebody that is absolutely near and dear to our hearts in Barry Bro, and I just have to ask you, coaching with that man for how many years that you did and knowing him as a friend, just give us a couple stories that everybody will enjoy, please.
Well, I'm gonna give you first of all, Barry was the only guy I know that we got hammered by Northampton. And when we took over the program in 97, we took over the program. Northampton had gone to the state final in 95 and won, and then in 96 they lost in the state final. And Mike Schneider was on that team. He was a catcher on that team. So they were hammering us. I mean, absolutely hammering us. And afterwards, if a lot of you people that know Barry, Barry ran a route for Pepperidge Farm. So, we had the Milano cookies and all that. Barry's giving the kids cookies, Joe. We just got hammered 14-0. So I'm sitting there and I took the cookies out of his hand and I said, "What are you doing? You're rewarding these kids? They're going to think it's okay to lose 14-0. Nah, don't worry about it. They're only kids." So and not for anything, but you only have an hour. I could sit here and tell Barry stories for an hour.
I would go to their house and even if it wasn't about sports, I would say, oh, I'll go over for 5-10 minutes, and he would keep me there for at least an hour. Just talk about anything and everything. And
Yeah.
now, when you meant about Northampton, did you mean Brian Schneider, the catcher?
Brian Snyder, I'm sorry. I said
No,
Mike.
I
That's his
just
uncle.
wanted to make sure. He was a Philly, so you knew I knew him. I mean, I just
Yeah,
had to
yeah.
throw that in there. But yeah, no, thanks. And I know, of course, Joni will love that story, and she will probably have 100 more, right? We have all Barry stories. We all miss them though. So, well, anyway, I will go on to talk about Lehigh. You've coached at Lehigh for 14 years. What's your thoughts on the Lehigh Lafayette rivalry, and how would you say it compares to the Easton Peaburg rivalry based on your experiences?
I'm going to tell you something. You think you know how intense the rivalry is? No one out there who hasn't been on any field for a Lehigh Lafayette game knows what this rivalry is. And you know, the difference between, you know, basketball, they play each other twice. Football, they play, obviously, you know, one time. You know, we play each other 4 times, you know, 4 times a year. And sometimes, you know, because of the Carpenters Cup, where there's 8 teams in that tournament, sometimes you play 5 times. But it is the most intense rivalry that you can be. And I mean this from the standpoint of winning or losing. There's not a time when it's not total euphoria or you're just totally disappointed. The bottom line is, if you don't win that series and you don't win 3 out of 4, it was not successful. But the rivalry is unbelievably intense. And you got to experience it. You have to be there. In comparison to Easton and Peaburg, I think the big difference is, you know, that is an intense rivalry as can be. I mean, I was lucky that, you know, Matthew played for Easton, and, you know, that game was at Hackett's Park, and there's 500 people in the whole bit. I think the difference is there's a big difference when you're playing 4 games and you're playing 1 game. 1 game, it's 7 innings, everything you got and everything. You know, in 4 games, man, let me tell you, you spent at the end of that weekend. You know, and if you're not, something's wrong. You know, but it's just a tremendous experience. You know.
Yeah, and I think football is different. If you're talking about football, I mean, now just working for Easton, coming from Notre Dame, even the younger kids enjoy it. But I think baseball, like you said, you're playing games in a row, you're playing home and home, you know, whatever you're doing, it's just a lot different than playing 1 game. If you're playing 1 game, the rivalry is good for that game, but I feel like that's a whole different animal. And I think that was a good point by you, talking about the baseball season and how it is different than what you say in a football season. So
yeah, Joe and I tried to
I can understand that.
tackle the Easton Peaburg rivalry as much as we could a few weeks ago, but you know, and you're right. If neither of us have been on the field, it's probably completely different being on the field. But so we've talked about all the different places that you coached. Who are some of the most talented players that you've seen? I'm sure some might come from Lehigh, some might be in the Blue Mountain League, but most talented players you've come across and coached along the way.
Well, that's really a loaded question because I've been around for so long. Blue Mountain League, you know, again, you know, Timmy Fisher, I had the pleasure of not only playing with him for 20 years, but, you know, my goodness, I mean, he coached with me for 8 years, you know, and then Bob Zerafos, Bobby Thomas, Mickey Kapora, you know, Rick McGeehan, you know, all these guys, they're from Blue Mountain. I could sit here and name 100 guys from Blue Mountain League. You know, college-wise, you know, Jimmy Vendetti, who was an all-star third baseman, Tommy Filer, who played in the major leagues, Freddie Morris, who played in the Houston organization, Joey Stampone, who's a very prominent attorney in Philadelphia, who's played in the Dodger organization. You know, Legion players, you know, I had the catalyst of everything were Chris Carty and Jim Bob Happel. You know, they started in 97 and 98 when they were sophomores. And then by 99, we had won the division. You know, they told us it would take that it was going to take us 5 years to get back. It took those kids 2 and they were back. Then, you know, Ian McCutcheon, who played at Lafayette, Chad Warder, who played again, was dumb enough that after he played for me at Easton, came and played for me at Lehigh, and Coach Leary. You know,
What
they
about
were just
McGarrigan?
special. Excuse me?
Brandon, did you have Brandon McGarrigan?
Oh, yeah. B was just, you know, the ironic thing with B is B's probably the most talented shortstop I've ever had. He could have played at the next level, you know. He just had injuries and some things during college, and but he, you know, he was a pleasure to have. He was a tremendous player from Nazareth.
Got to see him up close at the Cats, because when I announced for the Cats,
yeah, that's right.
He was a shortstop, and he was a heck of a player.
Yeah.
What about Easton native Phil Gunther? Did you Phil?
Well, you know what, Phil, I didn't have Phil. I mean, because Phil was Palmer. He was at Palmer.
Yeah.
And Phil, the ironic thing, I mean, I had Joel Hockman, who was about the same time, and Joel went to Lehigh then and had a great career, and he was player of the year in high school at Easton, you know. And then I'll tell you what, you want to talk about really the 2004 class in Legion, and whom, you know, my son was on that team, but you know, they won like 60 games and went to the regional, like Derek said. And then the 2007 team is one of the winningest classes in the history of Easton baseball. Now, don't get me wrong, we played more games than a lot of those quality teams in the 90s, and the teams in the 60s were phenomenal. But they won a lot of games, those kids, and they went to a regional. So we went almost 20 years of not going to a regional to go on to 2 regionals in 4 years, you know, 4 and then 7, you know, which was very impressive. At Lehigh, you know, you had Mike Garzilla and Justin Pacioli, both play pro ball. Justin's still playing, and now he's going to coach at Beck, I heard.
Oh, really?
You know, Mike Garzilla was an MVP, and on, you know, they were both on that 2015 NCAA Lehigh team. And then, you know, Andrew Berger and Mike Lebo, who both play pro ball. And, geez, there's 6 other kids who play pro ball. And right now we have a heck of a group that I'm really, really proud of. So yeah, tough to name when you've been around for 40 years. So
that's amazing. That's amazing. That's a lot of players. I know you never coached him, but I know you saw him play, and you probably saw him a little bit more up close at Blue Mountain, and that was Notre Dame's own Brian Tchaikovsky. Do you remember watching him play at all?
Oh, yeah. Brian played with Johnny. He played with my son, John, at Lineport in the Blue Mountain League. And I'll tell you what was a shame was Brian also then went to Maryland Eastern Shore.
Yep.
And I coached against him when he was down there. But I will tell you, he would have been a professional. He had a professional arm. But, you know, injuries play into this game, unfortunately. And, you know, but he had a good career, you know.
Still a great friend of mine, and he still looks like he did when he was in college. It's amazing. That guy never puts on weight. I always make fun of him for it. Well, anyway, this is going to be a little more of a personal question, but we need to ask it anyway. Few fathers get to coach their sons and daughters in the field while they're young, and even fewer get to coach them in high school. Can you talk a little bit about what it was to coach your sons, John and Matt?
Well, I'll tell you what, really, really fortunate. It's not an easy thing to do, I will tell you. It's not an easy thing to do. You know, you got to have a pretty darn good wife, because it really is. It's tough. You're tougher on your boys than you are other people. You really are. And anybody who says that they're not, then they never did it.
Right.
But
right.
What's that?
They didn't do it right, you know.
Yeah. You know. But yeah, I was really fortunate. I mean, they both played hard. They both played and gave everything they have. The fortunate thing for me is they both played on those 2 regional teams. John played on the 4 team, and Matt played on the 7 team. And then, but probably of all the things that we're talking about today, I think probably the most proudest moment was, you know, coaching both of my boys. You know, the unfortunate thing is that for the first year of Matt's Legion career, he actually, because we live in Palmer, played for Palmer. You know, he didn't play for me until the second year. And what that sort of cost us was both boys playing together for 1 year. But again, I was fortunate that I had both of them, and they both had great careers. But, you know, love my boys. And the other thing I will say is I was lucky because I had, going back to my assistant coaches, I had great assistant coaches to the point where they saw how much stress sometimes it would be on me. And they would come to me and say, here's the deal. We have 18 kids on the roster. You coach 17. We'll coach the one. And those being my son. Because that way I didn't have to really make too many decisions. And I was fortunate that they worked hard enough that it wasn't like, well, should I put him in the lineup? Should I put him in the lineup? You know, that wasn't the case in point.
And both of them are great. Both of them are great guys. They're both great personalities. Maddie has always been the humorous one. I figure he's the funny one. And my brother, I know with Mike been on our show before and he always listens. I'll have to say this right now. He loved playing with Johnny. Johnny would relax him. Mike would go up to the plate thinking at Notre Dame, oh, I got to get a hit. And Johnny's like screaming something at him. And so, you know, that's definitely good memories of
no, that was probably, you know, gee whiz, the greatest memories. And then, you know, not for anything, but, you know, then I had my nephew. The only thing was I didn't stay for his duration because, you know, I went to Lehigh then. And, you know, so it was unfortunate I wasn't there for his 4 years. But Derek, you played on that regional team also, right?
I would have been, I think 2011 was my first year. So were we? I don't think so.
No, I was at Lehigh.
I think that was before.
3 years after what 07 when Maddie was. So you're probably right about that, actually.
Well, shout out to Johnny and Matt. Hopefully they get to listen to this on some capacity. So staying on the personal level here, we have two more questions. So what with the ever-changing world, and you kind of talked about how some of the coaching methods would put you in jail these days, but what would be some words of advice to a young athlete that's coming up nowadays? Obviously you're still in the realm of college, but maybe some kids in the younger grades.
Well, number one, and I mean this, hit the books. Don't think that it doesn't matter, because it does matter. You know, it doesn't matter what school you apply to. The recruiting process is tedious, and it is very, very difficult. And if you make a coach's decision easy because you have really, really good grades, it matters. It does. It really matters. Unless you're just an unbelievably great player, you know. I was always taught at a really young age that, you know, God's not fair in the way of talent. Okay. He's given unbelievable talent to some people who don't use it. And he's given unbelievable heart to other people, you know, but they don't have as much talent as those other people. But the one thing that he allows all of us to do, if you're a healthy person, is to work hard, and you all have the same opportunity. So if you have the same opportunity and you work hard, one thing you should never, ever do is let anybody ever outwork you, ever. So it doesn't matter if somebody is unbelievably talented or not. If that person is unbelievably talented, then what I have to do, if they're more talented than me, is I have to outwork them. So if I was talking to a young athlete, and I say this to our young guys, 3 weeks ago, we have a Zoom meeting tomorrow night. And what we'll be talking about during this snowstorm is that, you know what we need to do is, if we're going to beat Army and Navy, we have to outwork them, because we're not going to be better than them. They can recruit from all over the world, but we can outwork them is what we can do. And if you don't believe you can do that, then, you know, you have a problem. But that's what my message to young people is.
Great. That's a great advice right there. Well,
For all the people young people listening, take that to heart.
And this has been all these questions, I think, were really going to be interesting. But this one was one of my favorites, because when I always talk to you, wherever we are, we always talk about, of course, baseball, but talk about you being a Yankees fan and then you following other teams. So this is going to be one of my favorites. So what made you want to become a Yankees fan is, first, were there any players that you based your game after? And who were some of your favorite Yankees of all time?
Well, I'll tell you what, I didn't really have too much of a choice. The ironic thing is Derek's grandfather, my father, was a Philly fan. But my neighborhood, where I came from, 9th Street, which is right down the street from St. Anthony's, was predominantly Yankee fan, because it was an Italian neighborhood, and the Italians rooted for the Yankees. Now, there's a lot of Italians out there right now that are going, what the hell is he talking about? But it's really, really true. 90% of the guys that I grew up with, they were Yankee fans. And I just became a Yankee fan, you know? And I came up, you got to remember, when a time when Mickey Mantle was still playing, and Bobby Mercer was coming up, and, you know, things like that. And, you know, so it was a special time. You know, Roger, you know, I was 7 years old when, Maris and Mantle hit 61 and 54 home runs, and Willie Mays was playing. But the bottom line was, you know, those were just big names, and they were ball players. They were ball players, you know? So
I will say, if the Italians were the Yankee fan, who were the Mets fans? Just my dad.
I don't know. You know, I don't know where he came from. I'm not really sure where your dad came from, to be honest with you.
Well, yeah.
Just for the record, he also likes the Jets. So
yeah, poor guy.
My mom's sister, Epi there, she's a Yankee fan, and my Uncle Joe's a Yankee fan. So my godparents are both Yankee fans.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, favorite players are Mantle. I mean, of course, you know, Jeter and those guys, you know, from that generation. But yeah.
How about LeMahieu? Do you want to see him come back?
Oh yeah, they better sign him somehow. So it'd be a big mistake.
I think Didi's coming back too.
We kind of just before we sign off, were there any guys who you kind of based your game after, or?
Well, you're gonna laugh, Joe, Derek. You guys are gonna laugh. Tom Seaver was he was my idol. I mean, he really was. He was my guy. That I just got done reading his book, The Last Icon, and it's really, really true. He was an unbelievably hard worker. And a lot of people don't realize this, but Seaver, not only winning 300 games and winning a World Series, he was a late bloomer. Like when we talk about working hard and everything, everybody thinks he was an All-American at USC, you know, right away and everything. He was on his JV team as a junior in high school, no lie. And then as a senior was, you know, the number 2 pitcher. And then went to a junior college. And when he went to the junior college, he flourished, and he started playing in a summer league. And the coach from USC saw him in the summer league, and he threw really extremely well. And USC picked him up. And in 1967, he was pitcher of the year. And after a lot of hard work, and they won the national championship that year. Tom Lasorda came to see him pitch, and was going to draft him to be the Dodgers, and Seaver, believe it or not, had good grades and was going to go to dental school, and the Dodgers didn't give him enough money, and Tommy Lasorda told him, "Hey, good luck in dental school," and the Mets drafted him, and the rest is history.
Wow.
But that's a true story. And the bottom line is that my game was all about him because of his follow through, his control. He was a power pitcher, but he was a smart pitcher, you know, and conditioning. And he was one of the guys who started with the lifting the weights. Now, you know, I personally feel that that's a big deal. A lot of people don't believe in lifting weights from, you know, if you talk to the old timers from the 50s and 60s, but it's, you know, it's imperative. It has to be done. He was doing it in the 60s, you know, and that's what I picked up on that. And that's why I started lifting at a really young age.
Interesting.
Well, I think we'll sign it off there. John, thank you very much for coming on. All your accomplishments we ran through and everything, but I would say the definition of a leader of men and coach of men is definitely you. So we
Thank you, guys.
appreciate coming on and
Yeah.
thank you very much for being here.
Guys, good
Well,
luck to you. You're doing a
yeah.
great thing here.
Thank
you did
you.
a heck of a job, and I wish you luck. And
Thanks. And you know what? Maybe we can have you on for a baseball show, even if it's in the season, something.
yeah, no, that would
Bring
be
you back
great.
on.
That would be great.
Bucks, you
No,
know?
it was a lot of fun. Happy holidays to everybody and your families.
You too. Thanks,
Thanks.
Mr. Bisco. I really appreciate it.
Well, and that'll wrap us up. So for Joe Azzolino and my uncle John Bisco, thank you very much for taking time out of your day to spend some time with us. Stay safe with all this snow coming and take care.